History remembers the conquerors, the saints, and the tyrants. But some kings live in the spaces between. Born the youngest son of William the Conqueror, Henry Beauclerc had no throne in sight, and yet he would rule both England and Normandy, reform the kingdom, and leave behind a legacy shaped by intellect, tragedy, and ambition. Henry was born in 1068, likely at Selby, Yorkshire. He is the only son of William the Conqueror, born on English soil. He studied Latin, logic, and the liberal arts, which was rare for a Norman prince. During his lifetime, he was called Beauclerc, the fine scholar. But in a world where strength ruled, his mind would be his sharpest sword. William the Conqueror had 3 sons. Robert the eldest, who was called Robert Curthose, meaning Robert Shortpants. The second son was William. He was called William Rufus because of his reddish complexion. And finally, there was Henry. In 1087, William the Conqueror died. His manner of death is unclear, but it seems he had a fatal riding accident. Suffering from his injuries and knowing his death was near, William divided his possessions among his sons. Robert Curthose, who was constantly rebelling against his father, inherited Normandy. William Rufus was given the prize of England, and all Henry received was £5,000. In 1096, Robert Curthose mortgaged the Duchy of Normandy to his brother William to raise funds for a crusade against the Turks. In August 1100, while Robert was away on crusade, his brother William Rufus, King of England, died in a hunting accident, shot with an arrow by Walter Tyrrell. Henry, who was in England at the time of William's death, acted decisively. He seized the treasury at Winchester. On the day his brother died, and 3 days later, he was crowned King of England. To prove himself just and fair, Henry issued the Charter of Liberties, a royal pledge to end corruption, curb abuses, and restore the laws of Edward the Confessor. This was a bold step that would echo through time and inspire Magna Carta over a century later. To unite his realm, Henry marries Edith of Scotland, daughter of Malcolm III, a descendant of Anglo-Saxon kings. She takes the Norman name Matilda. Through her, Henry bridges the Norman and English bloodlines and secures loyalty where conquest had failed. But Henry was not done, yet there were threats remaining. By now, Henry's older brother, Robert, Duke of Normandy, had returned from crusade. Bold and emboldened, Robert thought that England should have been his. There was repeated fighting between him and his brother, Henry. In 1106, Henry invaded Normandy, and in a battle at Tinchebray, Henry met and defeated his brother. The clash was brief, and Robert was captured. He was imprisoned by Henry for the rest of his life. Henry now ruled both England and Normandy, uniting both territories as his father William the Conqueror had done years before. Henry was not merely a warrior king. He was an architect of government. It was under his rulership that the exchequer was established. This was a sophisticated auditing system that allowed the king to have a fairly accurate count of all he earned within a year. He appointed royal justiciars and centralized justice. Henry was a harsh ruler, but not excessively so. He skillfully controlled his barons in both England and Normandy, eliminating those who opposed him and elevating those loyal to him. He brought order to the Duchy of Normandy and ruled his court with strictness. Abuses that were once allowed were no longer tolerated under King Henry's rule. King Henry valued efficiency and was not afraid to appoint new men to positions of responsibility. These were men of low birth who proved themselves reliable and efficient, and thus rose to become administrators in his kingdom. But no amount of law, efficiency, and reliability could stay the hand of fate. In 1120, King Henry suffered his greatest tragedy. His only legitimate son, William Atheling, heir to the throne, died. His death came about in November 1120 when William, the young prince, threw a party in Normandy. Drunk and rowdy, he and his companions set sail on the White Ship. What should have been an easy journey quickly turned tragic. As the ship left the harbor, it hit a rock and began to sink. The young prince was rescued from the ship, however. Reports are that he turned back to rescue his half-sister and brother. That was a costly decision. All the young people perished. The body of young Prince William was never recovered. A generation of young nobles gone, and with them, Henry's hopes for a peaceful succession. Though Henry had many acknowledged illegitimate children, a total of 21, he only had 2 legitimate children with his wife, his son William and his daughter Matilda. It was his son whom he hoped would succeed him, but now he had to look to his daughter. In grief and desperation, Henry named his daughter Matilda as heir. Matilda was the widow of the Holy Roman Emperor. She was intelligent, proud, and divisive. After her husband died, she returned to England, and Henry arranged a marriage between her and Geoffrey of Anjou, a young man 12 years her junior. It was hoped that Matilda and Geoffrey would have a son who could legitimately inherit the throne of England. Until that happened, though, Henry forced his barons to swear loyalty to Matilda twice, signaling that she should inherit if he should die before the son she is expected to have comes of age. But things hardly ever happened as planned. In 1135, while in Normandy, Henry indulged in his favorite dish, lampreys, a type of eel-like fish. Against medical advice, he consumed them in excess. He became ill, and days later, he was dead. Henry was only 67 years old. His body was taken to Reading Abbey, a house of God he had founded. Despite his careful planning, Henry's death unleashed chaos. His nephew Stephen of Blois seized the throne. Matilda fought back, and for nearly 20 years, civil war consumed England, a time known as the Anarchy. Unfortunately, Henry's administrative genius could not outlive the instability of his bloodline. Henry I was a man of paradox, a scholar who wielded the sword, a reformer who ruled with iron. He laid the foundation of English government, but left it teetering in his absence. And in the shadow of his death, the future of a dynasty unraveled. He was never meant to be king. But in the echoes of history, King Henry I proved that power is not always born, it can be taken, built, and held until death.